Hello, this is Bonnie Gabowitz, and this is Ward Talk. I'm speaking today with Jen Eyer from Ward 5. We'll be talking about her special ward, all the information about Ward 4, and we'll be talking about the city of Ann Arbor this October day. Welcome, Jen. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk. So welcome to Ward Talk. I'd love to hear a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate all the work that you and everyone else at CTN does to keep our community informed of our local government happenings. So I just wanted to make sure I said that right from the beginning. I am Jen Eyer. I am a Ward 4 City Council member. I was elected in November of 2020. So I was a pandemic candidate and have been a pandemic serving council member so far. We have yet to have an in-person council meeting, which has made for sort of an interesting dynamic among members of the council. But we're doing the best we can, and we are getting a lot done despite all of that with our great city staff that we have. And I know you wanted me to talk a little bit about my background. I'm a 20 plus year resident of Ann Arbor, moved here in 1999.
That gives you a good perspective of how things have changed over the years too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've watched it every step of the way because I was a member of the media for many, many years. So I've always been called to public service. And when I was in college, I decided to study and get into journalism as a way to serve as part of the Fourth Estate, and worked as a journalist and an editor with MLive and the Ann Arbor News for many, many years. I was with MLive Media Group for about 16 years. And then in 2016, I decided it was time for a career change and moved into strategic communications, at which point I immediately jumped into politics and served as communications director for our now Governor Gretchen Whitmer, for our now Congressman Andy Levin. So I worked on those campaigns and a variety of other congressional and legislative as well as local campaigns.
So you've had some experience dealing with governmental dynamics for several years now before you became a council member.
Absolutely, absolutely. As an editor, I was always watching closely so that I could be informed in terms of how I was editing and responding to readers and editing stories and all of that. And then, in the work that I've done since then in strategic communications, really looking at public policy and how to move public policy. I mean, it's not just communications. It's not just about communications. It's about really moving forward public policy that I'm passionate about. And so speaking of that passion, I'm really passionate about progressive public policy. I've always worked for candidates who are progressive and organizations. I've done a lot of work in the labor movement and environmental organizations, social justice, criminal justice reform. And so when I thought about running for office myself, I looked around and thought, where do I believe I can make the most difference? And for me, it's really at the local level. I think that we've had great representation on the Democratic side in the state House and in the state Senate. And really, I looked at some things that were happening locally and felt that we needed more progressive policy. And so I ran with that in mind and with a message of leading Ann Arbor forward. That is to say, working on policies that increase that not just look at our basic services and making sure that we are delivering the highest quality basic services to residents that they deserve to have, but also trying to move us forward on several fronts that are really challenging for us. We have a housing shortage, a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis when it
And,
comes to housing.
and all these issues have been ongoing. So you're really kind of jumping into it now. That really gives us a good perspective of the fact that you're coming in now and you're ready to roll up your sleeves. Now, it being October and you started this in November, you're no longer a newbie.
Right.
You're right in the middle of it. So let's talk about Ward 4, which you represent.
Absolutely.
You know, that's a pretty large area with a lot of diversity as well. So tell us what's happening with Ward 4.
So Ward 4 is, for those who are watching and may not know, it's Southwest Ann Arbor. We have a great amount of diversity in the ward in terms of older established neighborhoods, as well as a lot of apartments. I've been told we have the largest number of apartments and apartment, renters of any ward in the city. And so it's important to me that I represent both of those constituencies equally.
And just to mention that in the whole city, the rental population makes up more than 50% of the whole population of residents.
Indeed, it does. That's
Yeah.
right. That is right.
Mm.
So in Ward 4, we have some questions about growth. We have, as a council, passed our transit-oriented development policy, which is looking at increasing density where it makes sense along our transportation corridors. This is something that I found wide agreement on when I was knocking doors during my campaign. People understand that we have a housing shortage, and they understand that we do need to increase density. And the major concern is always, where do we do that? And it makes the most sense to start and really focus on our transportation corridors so that people can easily use public transportation.
Well, especially now that Ann Arbor is looking to have more people not using their cars and vehicles, and to encourage people to be walking and biking and taking public transportation.
That's right. That's right. So if we can center that new housing along those transit lines, that will be the best for us in many ways.
Is there much area in your ward that's available for more housing?
There is. There's, of course, we just approved the Valhalla. Well, it's called Valhalla right now because it's along Valhalla Drive. I think it will be called something else when they actually get to the point of developing it. But it is a new housing development that will be right next to the U of M golf course. So that's in my ward. We also have Briarwood. And while Briarwood is still a viable operating mall, we know just kind of the way malls are going in the country. And so I think we need to be prepared and thinking about what will Briarwood look like 10 years from now. There's a whole lot of open space there. And I would love to see housing developed along, all around that area with maybe even some sort of mini downtown concepts as well.
Is it one corporation that owns all that property?
Yes. Yep, it sure is right now. But people have been really thinking about the future of Briarwood, and it's important because it is our largest taxpayer in the city. So nobody wishes for Briarwood to go belly up. I'll tell you that. But just knowing the turnover that we see there and the importance of that property to our ability to be a financially viable city, right? To provide the services that residents expect. We certainly would never want to have a huge hit like that. So I know that city staff is proactively thinking about that, and so we'll just have to see where those conversations take us.
Great. And is there anything else happening with Ward 4 that you'd like to comment on?
You know, one of the things that I hear about most in Ward 4 from residents is your basic traffic issues, bike lane issues, sidewalk issues. We do have a neighborhood in the 4th Ward that has a ton of sidewalk gaps. It's the neighborhood around Rosewood, Jewett, Page, just over there about off Packard, north of Georgetown. And I have heard a lot from residents in that area in the time that I've been serving so far. So just last week, I organized a neighborhood meeting, and we gathered together a group of folks. Well, I papered the entire neighborhood with flyers, and so folks showed up, and we had a great conversation about all of their needs in terms of their sidewalk gaps, like I said, needs for traffic calming because people use it as a cut through between Packard and Industrial, and people speed through, and there's lots of near misses or even crashes. So safety is a real issue there. And so I'm going to be working very closely with the neighbors to help come up with some solutions.
And are you still in the process of adding bicycle lanes in your ward, or is that pretty much done?
I think there are, yes, there are still areas where we are adding more or refining the ones that we have. It's my goal to have protected bike lanes wherever possible. So particularly when I think about Ward 4, I think about Stadium and Packard and our main arteries where it can feel very dangerous to ride a bike. I'm very glad that we've done what we've done with South Main Street, narrowing removing a lane and narrowing that so that we can have these nice big bike lanes now that just make it so much safer for people. I know it's hard to adjust to the changes, particularly as drivers, but it's so important for safety if we all can slow down and share the road with people who on bikes and with our pedestrians as well. That's the only way that we're ever going to get to zero traffic fatalities, which is our goal.
Great. Well, we're going to be coming back and we will be talking about the whole city. We've got plenty to talk about, so we'll be back in a few minutes. Hold on, Jen, and don't go away. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
This is Bonnie Gabowitz for Ward Talk. We're going to be taking a short break. We would like to hear from you. If you'd like to email us at ctn@a2gov.org, attention Ward Talk. You could also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll be right back.
Voting absentee in Ann Arbor's upcoming election is so easy, even a kid can do it. Simply register to be an absentee voter by sending the proper paperwork to the Ann Arbor City Clerk via email, mail, or in person. As the election approaches, absentee voters will receive their ballot in the mail. To vote, completely darken the box opposite each of your choices. When complete, place a ballot in the secret sleeve so votes cannot be seen and the number stub is visible. Place your ballot and secret sleeve in the return envelope. Seal, sign and date in the designated area, stamp and mail, or deliver your ballot in person to the city clerk before the close of polls on Election Day.
This is Bonnie Gabowitz for Ward Talk. We're back with Jen Eyer as a council member from Ward 4. Jen, thank you so much for telling us about Ward 4. Now we're going to talk about the whole city because we do have some dynamic things happening, some changes, some new things in the air. And I've been watching a lot of decision-making going on. So let's first of all talk about the change in leadership in terms of the city administrator and looking for a city attorney. Can you bring us up to date on that?
Absolutely. Well, where would you like me to start?
Well, let's start with the new city administrator, who I believe is starting on the 18th of October.
That's correct.
And what's happening with Mr. Fournier.
Oh, sure. So the council just at our last meeting decided to authorize the city attorney to enter into a contract with an interim city administrator. So we decided to go outside the organization and hire a very experienced interim city administrator who can serve for probably the next year as we kind of get our bearings again.
So that would be an interim position.
Yes, it is an interim position. However, there's nothing to say if it doesn't go well, that we can't make it a permanent one if it would be desired on each side of the equation. So that is always something we can think about. But right now, our real goal, our immediate goal is to make sure that we have stability in city government and that we have some fresh eyes on some of our processes in the wake of a couple of quick departures with our two previous city administrators. So Mr. Dohoney comes to us from Phoenix, and like I said, he is very highly experienced, very well regarded administrator.
And I noticed at the last meeting, the mayor and several other council members expressed their delight and their confidence in this new person.
We are very excited, and I feel comfortable saying the entire council is delighted. And we have very high hopes for Mr. Dohoney. Like I said, he's not only very experienced, but he just has a very calm demeanor. He's very measured, and I think that he will bring sort of a steady hand to the organization, which is what we need right now. You mentioned Mr. Fournier. He has been serving as our acting city administrator for well, I guess a couple of months, and he's been doing just a terrific job for us. We really appreciate all the extra work that he's done, and he's really going to be very helpful to Mr. Dohoney when Mr. Dohoney comes on the 18th in terms of providing some of that, the continuity and the institutional knowledge that's necessary.
So he'll go back to being the assistant, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about some proposals that are in front of the council. They're labeled by letters, and I don't have all the details, so let's start with Proposal A.
Yes, absolutely.
With that.
I'm super excited about Proposal A. It is something that I have worked on in concept through some of my previous work with various organizations, just in terms of how organizations like the city hire contractors. So Proposal A, in short, is a best value purchasing policy. And
rather than the lowest bidder.
Rather than the cheapest bidder. That's right. So if you think about it in terms of how you act as a consumer, or if you're hiring someone to do work on your house, do you automatically go with the cheapest bid? Do you automatically buy the cheapest car or the cheapest refrigerator you can find? No, probably not, right? You do your research, you look at various factors that affect quality, that affect reliability. You may even look at how a company is, whether they're socially responsible, whether they treat their employees well, if that's something that matters to you.
So there are a lot of factors to consider, not just what the cost will be.
That's right. But it became very clear when I, shortly after I was elected and I started seeing bids come across for approval, that, staff, of course, is mandated by the city charter right now to go with the cheapest bid. And it, as I looked at various bids and thought, geez, for, $20,000 more on this multi-million-dollar contract, we could get a company that is so much better in terms of how they pay their employees, how they train their employees. We could know that they're highly skilled in the work that they're doing. But instead, we had to go with the cheapest bid because that's the way the charter mandates it right now. And so what this proposal will do is allow the charter to, is amend the charter. So instead of saying the lowest bid, it will say the bidder that provides the best value to the city. And if, assuming it is passed, which I very much hope it will be, the council will then develop a rubric, a set of criteria and a scoring system. So it will be completely transparent in terms of how bids are evaluated and how they're weighed. And we will say, okay, it's really important to us that companies provide healthcare to their workers, that they have highly skilled workers for the work that they're doing, and things like that. And then there'll be a scoring system that will dictate who gets the bid.
That's very interesting. And in terms of, I just want to go over the background of changing this. Is that up for a vote by your constituents?
Yes, yes, it's on the ballot in November.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So let's skip over to proposal C.
Yes, absolutely. So proposal C deals with emergency procurement. So this is something that is actually, it's not a change at all into how we do things. It's simply taking what is currently city policy, which says that the administrator, if there's an emergency, like a water main breaks, the administrator has the authority to go hire someone to fix it without having to wait until the next council meeting in order to get council approval. So that's currently the practice. And then the administrator does come to council at the next meeting for that approval as a matter of course. And council provides oversight in that way. But we certainly would never want the administrator to have to wait 2 weeks to get a water main fixed because we haven't given him the authority to do so. So like I said, it is currently city policy. It's just that the charter is silent on it. It doesn't address it at all. And so since we're going to voters with this proposal A, the best value proposal, city staff said, hey, would you mind just doing this one as well, just to kind of clean up the language and make sure that it's in there.
And by having ambiguity, that can also create problems in the future as well. So it's better to have it more well-defined.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and we've got one more proposal to talk about, and that's letter D.
Yes, so proposal D is one that is there to increase efficiency on the part of city staff. So currently, any contract over $25,000 has to come to City Council for approval. Now that was passed in 1995 and it was not tied to inflation. So in today's dollars, if we were to pass the same proposal, it would be about $50,000. Now we are on staff's recommendation, this proposal would raise it to 75. However, I asked for two important stipulations. One, that contracts between 25,000 and 75,000 and above, of course, must still go out for competitive bids. And two, that the city must put on its website who receives those bids so that we can still have oversight, but that city staff won't be spending so much time preparing these very small dollar in relative terms contracts to come before city council, and council won't be spending so much time considering these very small dollar contracts. Mm-hmm. I asked for an analysis, and council, if we pass this, council will see 40% fewer items come before us. However, it only represents 40% or 4% of the total amount of money that we spend on contracts.
But it would also cut down on the amount of time you spend in your weekly meetings.
That's right. That's right. So
That's a
again,
good
you know,
point.
these are, yeah, it's only 4% of our total spending, but staff spends, you know, 40% of the time on these very small dollar contracts.
Right.
So it's wildly out of proportion.
Right. Plus it makes everything more efficient.
Yes,
Right.
that's right.
Okay. And one subject that just recently came up is ranked choice voting, which sounds a little complicated because of the word rank. So, tell us a little bit about that. How is that different from the way voting is done now?
Absolutely. So this is proposal B on the ballot. It is also something that I fully support. And ranked choice voting is something that is gaining popularity across the country. It allows you, instead of when you vote, instead of simply voting for the one candidate you prefer the most, you get to rank all of the candidates in order of your preference. And
so you're going from one vote to several votes, but in preferential order.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, the advantages of this are that it leads to outcomes where the consensus candidate really emerges, so that you know, I may really, really want candidate A, but I may be okay with candidate B, and maybe I really, really don't want candidate C, right? So I'm going to rank them in that order. And
yeah, and I'm thinking in that way, it actually gives the voters more of a voice.
yes,
Because it's not just one person they have to vote for and say, this is the one I want. It gives them more input.
it does. And it allows people oftentimes to vote for the candidate they really want. Sometimes we end up making these calculations in our minds, like maybe we really want candidate A, but we think they have really no chance to win. So then we vote for candidate B instead. So it allows us to express our full desires. And then, you know, as candidates and as elected officials, we're able to get a better picture too of the desires of the electorate. If we can see that, gosh, you know, candidate A certainly didn't have enough votes to win, but they had an awful lot. And so there are an awful lot of people who really believe in this candidate's platform. So it can lead to outcomes like that. And what we've seen across the country is that it tends to be the consensus candidate that wins.
And if these proposals are voted in, when would the changes be made?
So for the ones I talked about earlier, the ones that deal with purchasing, those would be implemented right away. Ranked choice voting would not be implemented until such time as the state legislature makes a change to state law that would allow it. So it is not currently allowed. However, we and other municipalities are pursuing this as a way to say, hey, state legislators, we really want this. And so if they do make that change, we'll be ready and we'll be able to go ahead and implement it right away.
Very interesting. You know, that just goes to show that the council is really looking ahead and not just going along with the way things used to be, that you're looking to make improvements and consider what works best for the city and how residents can really express their opinions. And
Yes.
you know, I'm just bowled over by your interest and your experience. I think you bring a lot to the council.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for visiting us today. We could have gone on for another half hour, but for now, I'm going to invite you to come back sometime soon.
I would love it. Thank you so much.
Great. This is Bonnie Gabowitz for Ward Talk. We'd love to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org. Attention, Ward Talk. You could also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/ctn in Arbor. I'll see you next time. Stay healthy and well.